Thank you, Chair. The meeting is being recorded and published online after the meeting. Could all attendees leave their camera on but switch off their microphone when not speaking, but switch on both camera and microphone when you are invited to speak so that this is picked up on the recording. If you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand function or indicate in the meeting chat and I will alert the Chair. I will now do a roll call and would ask that members confirm their attendance when their name is called so that this is clear in the recording and can also be recorded in the minute. Councillor Gregg, Chair.
Present. Present.
Councillor Cook.
Yep, present.
Richie Johnson.
Yep, present.
And we have apologies from Hussein Patwa and Jamie Dale. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Robertson. Item 1.1, do members have any declarations of interest or transparency statements they wish to make? Nope, nothing there. 2.1, there is no exempt business for us to determine. 3.1 is the minute of our last meeting on the 25th of February. Is the committee content with that as an accurate record or any problems? We're okay with that. Okay, that's approved. Moving swiftly on to the business planner. Do we have questions on the business planner? Richie.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Just a couple of things. The finance update, I see again the recommendation is just to move that back to the board, if you like, given where we're at and at the time of year, I guess. It's just a reminder, maybe through Amy, it's quarterly updates to the board, Amy, or is it more regular than that? Just again, I'm content that we don't need to see it as well as an audit committee at this point, but just a reminder about the regularity that goes to the board would be good. And then I've got a second point as well, but I'm going to be paused there.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Yeah, so Richie, it is at least quarterly. Every IJB there will be a finance update, so every meeting will bring that forward. So quarterly, definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. And yeah, just through yourself, Chair. The second point is the planner overall feels a bit light, just in terms of future items, and I wondered if that was kind of typical in terms of just where we're at the time of year, and if there's new reports comes in maybe that we don't quite know about yet. And I certainly don't want to create more reports and more work just for the sake of it, but it's just that balance around doing a scrutiny role effectively. So just any comment about the kind of, I guess, the planner itself, and if there's more to come would be useful, I think. Thanks.
Yeah, okay, thank you. It's quite a long agenda in June, but then after that, there is less business. Well noted. So who could help with that query? John, are you going to help with that one, or you got another question? Different question.
No, I've got a different question.
Different question. Okay. Alison.
Thanks. Yeah. I think just again, we've moved some of the risk work that we would normally bring to this committee, and we've taken that to IJB, just because we're at the development of the strategic plan stage, and I think we're just wanting to make sure that that IJB is clear that the risk strategy, the strategic plan itself, and our finance is all aligned, so that I think you would normally be seeing a bit more risk work coming to this committee. So that's perhaps one of the reasons. But the other thing I was going to say is we are kind of the part of the work of this committee is to look at some national audit reports, and you know, we would consider them in the light of the Aberdeen City context, and that's very much dependent on when and if these reports are published. I think the last one was around about primary care, and I think it was agreed that that would be taken to clinical and care governance rather than this committee. So I think it is a little bit of an anomaly. I don't think we've ever seen the agenda, certainly for August. I think there's only one item on the agenda, so I don't think we've ever seen it as light as this. But I think there's probably a number of reasons why it looks like that at the minute. That's about all I can offer by way of explanation.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think there is a sense that we're in very high risk territory right now, and there is that wish to have a very corporate, centralized management of that risk because of the unusual, unprecedented financial situation that we're in. But I mean, once we get the strategic plan and once we go through those financial position updates at IGB, maybe the IGB could consider what it wants to refer down to the RAPC. Richie.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think that's right. And as I say, I don't want to create extra work for the sake of it, but if more being, I guess, understandably taken up to the IGB, then that does mean that our role perhaps gets weaker in some respects. So I think it's just that balance, and if it's a moment in time, if it's a conscious choice through the IGB that's what they want to do, we want to do, then that's fine. But I guess if that becomes a more kind of permanent arrangement, then for me it just perhaps just poses a question about have we got the responsibilities across the different committees right, and have we got enough teeth, if you like, as an audit committee. So just I'll leave that as maybe just an observation meantime, but and if colleagues want to take that away, just have a wee think about that, then I'm content with that. But yeah, I understand where we're at the minute. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Clearly it's a time for enhanced scrutiny, so we're not about diminishing the role of the committee. So we need to get the right balance where we're fulfilling our audit function and that questioning approach, which is going to be even more important in 25, 26, 27. So yeah, good points. Thanks for that, Richie. So John, you have a question.
Yeah, no, it's just on the frequency of the financial reports, because we said quarterly, which has traditionally been the way we've done it. I think we when we got to Q2, possibly, we said we'd have more regular finance updates. I know we've put in place the new committee, which just involves officers, and the name of the committee currently escapes me. And I'm just wondering if, and I'm content with that. I'm just wondering if it doesn't generate additional work, if we could have a finance update to every IJB, so it would be every couple of months rather than every quarter. And I don't think it would need to be a hugely long report. And as I say, I wouldn't want to generate additional work, but if we've got a group that's looking at the finances, I just think it's important that we keep that in mind and keep a close eye on it. And I'm sure it'd just be largely for reassurance to make sure that we're on track with what we're doing. But I'm just wondering if it would be possible, as I say, to have it at every IJB.
I mean, I think there's a lot of merit in what you're suggesting there, because that would help us. That would help the IGB with its self-assessment, with continuing to scrutinise, and even if it's a relatively high-level report, we could ask some of those difficult probing questions that we need to do to fulfil our role. Amy, any thoughts on this?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think probably didn't answer Richie's question properly, that I think to every IJB a finance report should be brought forward. So certainly we had, if you like, a February report with 2 IJBs in February. We reported our budget in March. We didn't have a committee in April as such, and we're taking a paper in May. So I feel just the kind of the way things, and then we've got, if you like, a significant update to be brought on the 1st of July. So I think the reporting of the finance information to the IJB does come at the appropriate intervals, and I think that will continue. There's always a little lapse in the summer. We have kind of that summer break period, but then we pick up an IJB September, November, etc. So I think it does occur at a regular interval, and in between times, if members don't feel that is sufficient, then additional information can be provided over the course of that time frame. So I don't think there's any question of providing the financial information so that the scrutiny can occur. It's just making sure that you're content with the information that's coming forward, because finance is quite a rigid cycle each year. So at each point in time, you're content with the information you get in order to apply the appropriate scrutiny. Certainly the way I have approached it is very much in line with the finance cycle. So I'm content with how we're moving forward just now, and I can provide that assurance when we get to each meeting, and was quite clear to say what the purpose of the report is and what I'm looking for IJB members to scrutinise. Well, that's probably the wrong way around. I'm keen to state the purpose and then outline the potential recommendations that members may wish to approve or otherwise.
Yes. Okay. Grand. Thanks. Happy with that, John. So the business planner, various items being removed, transferred, and one delayed. So we're okay with noting the business planner. Yeah. Grand. Item 4.1. There are no risk reports at 4.1. 5.1 is the external audit, the annual audit plan for 24-25. Does anyone have any questions on this one? This is item 5.1. Any questions on 5.1? We have. First of all, I'm noting the appointment of Michael Oliphant. I think that's correct. I just had one question about the on materiality and the reporting threshold. So that's page 19. There's mention there. There's mention there.
I'll just give a bit of an overview, and then I can answer your questions.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Yeah, please do. Yep.
So so this is our audit plan for the 24-25 audit of the IJB's annual report and accounts. And it takes into consideration the requirements of Audit Scotland's Code of Audit Practice and auditing standards, and also the findings from last year's audit. So this is the third year of our audit appointment. So Michael Oliphant's been your auditor for 3. This is the third year, and hopefully it's a 5-year audit appointment, just to remind you of that. So hopefully the content and the format of the audit plan is now familiar to the committee, because it's fairly standard year to year. So it's looking to set out the roles and responsibilities of ourselves as the auditors, and yourselves as the IJB with regard to the preparation and audit of the annual accounts. So some of the key information is set out in the exhibits. I'll run through those for you. So the first one's Exhibit 1 on page 18 of your papers. So as you were saying there, Chair, materiality is set out. So we have 2 lots of materiality. The overall materiality for the accounts itself is really looking at the overall figures and the level of error that's permissible, that we would expect might impact on what the reader of the accounts is considering. So this is set in line with auditing standards. So we use 2% as our kind of benchmark there, which gives the materiality level of 8.6%. Sorry, 8.6 million. There's also a performance materiality. So this is what we use when we're working on the audit. And if there are misstatements and issues that are arising during the audit that start to mount up to a figure of 4.3 million, then that would kind of ring alarm bells for us, and it would trigger the us requiring to do additional work. So the figure is, again, it's a percentage, so it's 50% of the overall materiality. So that's coming out to 4.3. So we've actually reduced this figure from last year into this year's plan. So you recall some of the financial difficulties that you're experiencing, they came to light last year. And we had some concerns round about understatement of expenditure, late accruals, that sort of thing. So as a result of those concerns, we've reduced our performance materiality this year down to 4.3. So that would mean if there's ongoing concerns this year, that would trigger us earlier than it would have done last year with regard to doing a bit more audit work. And it's all about us being assured on the figures and that everything is included and there's no omissions of material expenditure. So we'll be looking to just have a bit more focus this year as a result of our findings last year. Moving on to Exhibit 2, which is on page 20 of your papers, that's identifying the key risks. So the key risk that's here is the risk of misstatement due to management override of controls. This is a risk which appears in all our audit plans. It's a requirement of auditing standards. So the work that we do is, as I say, it's standard across all the audits that we have, but it is regarded as a significant risk. So we're focusing particular attention on estimates, on journal entries, just on any of the key areas where there's potential for management to override controls and to manipulate the financial information that you're receiving. So we have, just to highlight, we have no major concerns in these areas, but this is a significant risk that we're required to gather assurance on each year as part of our reporting. Moving to page 22 is our wider scope risks, and these are in line with Audit Scotland's Code of Audit Practice. So there's 4 key areas there that we're required to consider: financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, and use of resources. So in considering all of that, it won't be any surprise to you that we're focusing in on financial management and financial sustainability as key risks. Financial management coming from our reporting last year and the continued financial challenges that you're facing in the current year. And financial sustainability, as you know, it's something that's across all the IJBs and the public sector more generally. So we're just giving due consideration to future years and the challenges and how you're preparing to try and address those. And finally, our timetable for the audit is set out on page 25 of your papers. So we're preparing to have an annual audit report and the audit accounts back to the IJB for the September meeting. So you'll receive the unaudited accounts at your next meeting. We'll audit those over the summer and then report back in September. Page 25 also sets out our audit fee for the year. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Sorry, Chair, can I just interrupt for a second? It looks like we've lost Richie. I don't know if he's lost connection. I've been trying to dial him in.
Here he is.
Here he is.
Hello, Richie. We lost you there.
Yeah, sorry about that. Laptop completely froze at the restart. So I appreciate I was in full flow just when it happened. So apologies.
Grant, good to see you back. We're just on questions. Did you get most of that, Richie?
Yeah, I got most on. I just had one question on Anne's piece, if that was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just around it. Obviously, I understand the focus on financial management and financial sustainability. Just wondered if Anne or even Amy could say a little bit more about the nature of that kind of conversation and what that might kind of get into. Just, I think the answer is obvious in some respects, but would you mind just maybe just a bit more depth around that, please?
Well, from our perspective, obviously, the key issues we've set out there in the exhibit over the course of the last 12 months, there's been a turnover in the Chief Finance Officer, and there's been reporting of significant overspends. So what we're particularly interested in is what the response is to that by the AJB and by the partners, in terms of when there's change in staff, the world can, the world continues. So we're very interested in how the partners pulled together to provide the support to make sure that the information and systems continue, and that you as a board and a committee continue to get robust information and all the information that you need. So we're very interested in those arrangements. And then in terms of the deficits and the overspends, we've been looking at the situation that we reported the 31st of March 2024, and then how that has progressed through the current financial year that we'll be reporting on 24-25, in terms of the investigations and review that were undertaken by officers, what that's resulted in, what the plans were put in place to bring that back, what was able to be achieved in the financial year to March 25, and what's ongoing into 25-26. So just very much trying to get under the skin of what's happened, how it's being responded to, and in order that we can give a judgment of where we think, how robust we think the arrangements are at the time that we'll report in September.
Okay, thank you very much. Amy, did you want to come in on this point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, and definitely reflecting what you've said there. It is about process and not so much people, because the processes continue. And I think perhaps to reflect on where we have moved over the last quarter, that we have a good understanding of where our expenditure is and the challenges that we've got. And we've reflected that in our budget for 25-26. So we see overspend in adult social care and learning disability, and our plan to save money across commission service provision focuses on those areas. We looked at what we could do over the next 12 months really to reduce our cost base, and we were fortunate that we got the support of partners, both the City Council and the NHS, in really looking at how we manage that over a 2-year period and not, if you like, in a single year. And that's under the real drive to protect frontline services for the people that we serve in the city. And having that opportunity is really valuable, because it allows us to, if you like, progress through that very required, if you like, review of our business as usual activity, to make sure that we have got, if you like, a really good strong foundation on which to make that more transformative change, which we're looking at through the development of the strategy, and sitting underneath that a really strong underpinning finance plan that supports the work that we're going to do going forward. And I'm absolutely recognising our position across IJBs in Scotland, and people are taking a slightly different approach. I think our approach is a positive one, in that we recognise what we can do with the current cost base, but very much it's looking to the future. It's looking about bringing change, bringing that transformation across the services in order to deliver them in a more efficient and effective manner. And that's not necessarily the approach that everyone's taking, but we feel that is the approach to produce a more sustainable cost base. As we all know, we've had the benefit of reserves in previous years, so we haven't had to prioritise this activity perhaps in a manner that we realise now we really need to. Now the environment has changed. We need to be very responsible over the next 2 years to work down that financial, the structural deficit, that deficit that we've been carrying for a while, into a more manageable format, so that from when we get to 27-28, we're really just looking at managing a smaller value of inflationary pressures, a very much business as usual scenario. But the next 2 years are different. It's a change. It's about change and being effective and efficient. And we understand the areas that we need to push into, and we see the opportunity to do that. And it was on that basis that we built the budget, to do it sensibly, to protect that frontline services, to focus on process, to empower people in their areas in order to deliver this change. So as you said, the finance continues, the process continues, regardless of who sits in the role. So I hope that provides some assurance to members.
Yeah, thanks very much. I know, and clearly involved within that process of managing the financial challenges, managing the outturn deficits that are going to be happening. There will be ongoing impact assessments on service delivery. I think, for example, adult social care, adult disabilities. There will, I'm sure, be impact assessments, equality assessments. There are already significant pressures and significant reliance on the third sector. and that burden might shift to them whilst we're managing and reorganizing internally our financial resources. So I'm just kind of assuming that we will have also impacts and reports back on the implications and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Absolutely. And I think it's for me, it's almost like a change of culture as well that we're almost going through, that it's not just, if you like, the finance position changes, so everyone needs to kind of roll with that. It's as an organisation we change together, we change, and we're joined up on that change so that it is manageable for us, and as reflecting, our statutory requirements under finance, that at all times we're being, if you like, it's really important to be transparent, because the value of integration is that we do things together. We talk whole systems approach. We were having a discussion earlier today on that, and it's the value in delivering that which makes the benefit to communities. And certainly we know in Aberdeen City that there is real pressure on ARI and NHS Grampian, and we very much need to play our part in managing that. We don't just sit in isolation as Aberdeen City. We understand how we fit in with Shire and Moray, how we work together there to help, if you like, improve systems altogether, as we're doing in mental health, for example, just now. So it's very much, you've got to move with the environment. You have to recognise how you fit into the model, and then you have to deliver on what your objectives are around that. And we're going to be very transparent on that and very clear as we move through that process over the course of the next year and years to come over the course of this new strategy.
Grand, thank you. I'm very conscious that there is very considerable reliance on the voluntary sector, whether it's formal or informal, that carer capacity, if you want to call it that, is carries an enormous amount of the responsibility and of service delivery as a partner with the IJB. And so clearly, if there are forthcoming budget pressures that could impact on carer support, for example, respite, and so forth, I think we would want to know what are the consequences for these key partners in the delivery of health and social care. But yeah, so it's good that we will get that information. We'll have the data to process so that we can evaluate what are the impacts of these very tough decisions on resource. So thank you for that. John.
Yeah, it's just a comment rather than a question. I think the stuff around the wider scope, which goes beyond what you would do in the private sector, I always find that quite reassuring and helpful. And actually, on the back of that, Amy's comments just now are also reassuring. So that was it.
Grand. Okay, thank you. I might just had kind of a technical question on page 19 about, so that's from Exhibit 1. Is there, so the reporting threshold for misstatements below the reporting threshold, is there a likelihood of that happening, or is it very remote? So the figure there of 260k, is that probably not very likely to happen? A misstatement of a magnitude below.
Of a magnitude below.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not. So the figure of 260,000 is a figure that we arrive at, and above that, we would report any misstatements to yourselves. Below that, we would be just accumulating any misstatements that we're identifying. We would be discussing them with finance, and if we had particular concerns and needed to do more work, we would do so. But it's just that's just a threshold for what we report back to the audit committee on a formal basis. But yes, there can be a number of misstatements, which can be, very small amounts or large amounts. So last year, I think we were up, I think a couple of million was maybe the figure. So it was below our materiality, but it was a high enough figure that we were reporting to you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Just to have that reassurance that it's all being processed and considered. Thanks very much for that. So we're all done with questions on 5.1. The recommendations are there on page 9. Are we happy to note and agree the recommendations there? Yep, all fine with that. Thank you very much. In that case, we can move on to 6.1. Callum Leask's report, quarter 4 report update on performance against the delivery plan. Callum, would you like to say anything about your report?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. This is the quarter 4 delivery plan update. The purpose of this report is to provide assurance to the committee, and it's recommended that the committee note the performance in this report. The update is one the committee will be very familiar with in terms of the layout itself. We're providing progress against the last quarter of the delivery plan, in addition to several appendices to provide additional context, that being the delivery plan overview, the delivery plan tracker, and the delivery plan dashboard as well. For this reporting period, there is one project that was marked as complete. That was SE20 Health and Care in Countess Wells. The building became fully operational in March 2025. There are a couple of additional contextual things that may be useful just to share with the committee, given some of the conversations we've had today, particularly around the business planner and around scrutiny more generally. This report that you have in front of you is the last quarter of the current strategic plan, and we are obviously going to be in a sort of in-between period between the finalisation of this delivery plan and the new delivery plan and new accompanying strategic plan. As such, the report that the committee will receive at the next committee date will be a slight variation of this. At that committee, we will be looking to focus on the transition between this existing delivery plan that we've got at the final year of our old strategic plan and looking at what pieces of work we take forward or stop or add into the new delivery plan for the new strategic plan. We will also be looking to present how we propose to report moving forward, and a lot of that is in line with some of the conversations we've had today about how we can provide greater assurance to the committee that we are managing our activities as effectively as possible. So, for example, one of the things we will be looking to do is say there are activities that are maybe at risk of progressing. We will look to be much more explicit about why that is the case and what mitigations we are actively putting in place to address them. So again, I think it's just helpful to reiterate that this is work that we're doing at the moment to think about, particularly moving forward, given the challenging climate that we're in, and how we can provide greater assurance to the committee that we are managing our resources as effectively as possible. There's nothing else that I think would be useful to raise at this time, but perhaps take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Callum. I could kick off. Could I ask about so on page 41, hospital at home expansion? There's more information in the work plan. There's mention of planned and unplanned staff leave, staff absence as being a particular pressure there, and I wondered if you could help us with that, because the figures, the trend is increasing with the use of hospital at home service, and we want that to continue. But that there seems to be a question mark over staffing. I don't know if that's just a temporary incident or what.
Alison, do you want to come in?
Alison.
Thanks. I'll maybe come in and try and respond to that. I was going to say, unfortunately, we would normally have more of our SLT colleagues around the committee with us to try and help respond to some of these questions, but we've got a strategic planning workshop on today, so there's a clash there. So you've just got Amy and myself.
Yeah.
But anyway, in terms of hospital at home and indeed nursing in general, that we do tend to have a predominantly female workforce, and the planned absence that's being referred to could potentially be maternity leave. But absence is something that the partnership as a whole keeps a focus on. We've created what we call our governance dashboard, and sickness absence is one of the topics within that. And we do review absence figures on a regular basis, and try and drill down to the reasons why, and also put in some plans to try and support people to be at work more often. So, there's a lot of health and wellbeing initiatives to try and support that attendance. So I think, just to give you some assurance that we're aware of some of the absences and the impact that can have on delivering services, and we're doing our best to ensure that we adhere to the policies and procedures that we have for managing absence, and as I say, trying to support attendance as far as possible, because we know that we're not going to be able to deliver on all of our aims and objectives if we don't have a healthy workforce regularly at work.
Yeah, that's really reassuring to hear. That emphasis on supporting and encouraging staff, that is so important, and I would presume that work there will help to turn the amber into a green. There's also another factor for issues there's low use. This isn't something I really understand. There's low use for the 5 respiratory beds, and I wondered if we could have an explanation on that. That seems to be a key factor as well in the challenges.
Yeah, so there's a range of beds available, obviously, at hospital at home, and we're working closely with our acute colleagues, because what we rely on there is people referring into these beds and referring people with the appropriate needs that we can support in these beds. So there's a lot of work still to be done. A lot of the hospital at home support that we've been providing over the last few years has been quite reactive and has been focused mainly on the frailty pathway and keeping the patient flow through the hospital, and reducing our delayed discharges, etc. So there's that focus has kind of meant that some of these other specialised beds have not had the same sort of work put into them in terms of educating and awareness raising with our colleagues in acute as to the fact that they're there and the fact that they can be used. So again, we're very aware of that, and we're trying to do, we've got plans in place to try and address that going forward. Yeah,
that's great. Awareness raising for some proactive referring. Yeah, that would make sense. Callum, did you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I just put some comments in the chat, Martin, just to provide additional context. So the reporting period is January to March, and we quite often see kind of throughout the year there are particular times where there are higher concentrations of annual leave that are taken. So January covers kind of the end of the Christmas period, and then March covers the end of the financial period. We're obviously in a situation predominantly with NHS staff where currently we're not able to carry over annual leave. Right. What this can often mean is that there's a higher concentration of annual leave taken during this period of time. if you do have services such as hospital at home, which have relatively small numbers of staff, then this essentially exacerbates the staffing challenges, if you like. So this is something that we can expect to see, kind of given that context, given the time of year that this is being reported on.
Yeah, a seasonal thing. Amy, did you want to come in on this point also?
Yeah, so I think hospital at home for us, I think just providing some context around the service. So it's a really good opportunity. I think we cover around 50 beds just now, so it's a relatively small service. So even if one person is off, it's going to have an impact. It's an area that we are focusing on just now, and we are working at the request of government to increase that service. It is very much a joined at the hip approach with acute, because for every person that's in a hospital at home bed, they're overseen by a consultant in ARI. So that model and working around that, it stretches that consultant, but if we're taking that responsibility and providing that really strong care pathway, then that's going to be a successful model for us, and it's something that we're going to expand upon as we go through this coming year. Obviously, we are aware of the pressures on ARI and the requirement to move people from an acute setting into the community when they're ready to do so. So our other areas of focus are very much looking at the discharge to assess model and the frailty pathway that Alison has spoken about. We've put in, there's been additional funding that's been offered by the NHS, and we have put in our bid for that funding to help support that for us over the next 12 months. Even if we have good vibes around being able to receive that funding, and we should hear hopefully in the coming week and a half. Even if we're not successful in getting that additional support, which obviously would be very helpful, we feel through looking at the financial position that investing in that pathway creates recurring benefit. There's a really good return of an investment for that. And it also helps us manage the bed base well across the city. So it is an absolute area of focus for us just now. And that model requires all three areas, if you like: your frailty pathway, your discharge to assess, and your hospital at home. Those three work together really well, and Julie Warrender is certainly working well across that just now, and I'm supporting, if you like, in the financial support to make that work for us. And we're positive of the direction of travel there. And it is all about sustainability, delivering services well, and delivering that more efficient model. This is the change that we're talking about, that we had earlier on in the call. And that's a really good example of an area where we are making change that will have a positive impact and helps meet the requirements that the NHS Grampian are looking for us to fulfil. So it's kind of that whole system approach. It's a really good example of that.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. It is, I mean, I know from individuals who've provided feedback that it is a very much valued service, and it's a great innovative way of providing that specialised care and support. So I think that the integrity of the model is very important. We want to build confidence in it. We want to make sure that that families feel that it is a reliable, confident service. Could I just ask a kind of a supplement? On the work plan, there's mention of the use of digital and IT arrangements for hospital at home expansion, but that's a kind of a blank in terms of scoring. So is there any it's not a priority at this time to develop the digital system? Is just why is it not a priority? So
Will I come in on that, Martin, or do you want
thanks.
to go to Richie? I noticed you had your hand up first.
Whoever can help.
Yeah, so it is absolutely a priority to develop that digital infrastructure, and that is one of the bids that we have put in. It is going to be essential to have that infrastructure working well, and we have prioritised that as part of our planning. Again, we've made sure that we've maximised the opportunity to try and get funding forward for that, and it's something that we are really looking at just now. The opportunity there is really, really strong. And as I talked about, we want to move people swiftly from that hospital environment into the community environment, and that application, that technology that we've put in the bids to do that will really help that process. And it is absolutely focused on that discharge to assess. It's that ability to not need to speak to someone. You just get into your app, you say the care needs that someone needs. That's the way forward, and it has the opportunity to be pushed out more widely into the NHS as well. So if we are fortunate to get funding, we will be able to do way more than we can just now, and we will continue to push that. And certainly we are very fortunate that we have the support, real good support from Aberdeen City Council, who have a strong relationship with Microsoft as a partner, and Microsoft can see the value for this for Scotland. And we are hoping that even if we don't get the funding, the discussions will still go on, and we will find a way to develop this, because it is critical for a good care system to have that strong infrastructure that you can rely on. Just reflecting back to what Anne said, it's about process. We need to have that good, swift process to support going forward, because not only is it more financially sustainable, it is better for the person that's in the service, and they get access to that app as well, and they can see their journey. They can be assured around what's going to happen to them as an individual. So it answers a lot of the questions that then they don't need to ask of people. So you can just see how the efficiencies collect in a system like that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, digitization is a huge beneficial opportunity for the future, and so investment in it is really crucial. And I suppose that's why I was just puzzled that there wasn't a kind of, it hasn't started. It's recorded as not started. But that's a really helpful explanation to know that it is a key core part of the process, and will continue to be. There are huge opportunities for improving service delivery there. Thank you very much. Richie?
Yeah, thanks. That last kind of discussions are helpful. Actually, that's partly answered, I think, one of the questions I might wind my way into. So a few comments and then maybe a question or two. Just again, purely kind of observations. While there's a glossary at the very end, there is a few acronyms that's crept into some of the papers. So maybe an ask just to have a scan through would be helpful, I think. And I noticed that some of the actions and proposals have been closed, and I totally understand that. I guess the context of that, my kind of observation is that actually I think that's quite a useful discipline. So rather than just knocking it back in terms of another year or just changing the timescale, if there's a reason for it to be closed, it's just not really worth taking forward for whatever reason. As long as that reason I think is given, I think that's just quite a mature way of kind of reflecting that we might have started off on a particular path, but for various reasons, the circumstances have changed. We're not going to pursue that. So again, I think that's better than just adding to the timeline, adding to the timescale, if you like. The targeted approach to addressing sickness absences, I thought, was also good. I kind of touched on earlier on. I thought that was good. And overall, I think in terms of the papers, it was a really comprehensive update in terms of the progress against the actions, and I think for me certainly that assurance that all the delivery plan, the activity has been well monitored and managed, I think that came across really strongly. There's a tremendous amount of really diligent work underway, which is terrific. So kind of thanks to everybody for that. So overall, my kind of takeaway was that the vast majority of activity is green, on target, complete. There's a few in there that are maybe a bit more challenging in terms of timescales, but overall, I think for quarter four, it's a pretty strong update in terms of progress. The thing I guess I'm kind of coming round to is that with all that in mind, and that's the reason that last discussion, the last few minutes has been really helpful, is that it's a list of individual projects, and the bit that I guess is looking for maybe a comment around, and that this might come as part of that transitional report, Callum, that you referenced earlier on. I guess it's just almost without being sort of cheeky, kind of a so what question. So what are the key outcomes of all this activity for us, the delivery plan? What's that actually generated? And equally, if there are bits that are in the amber category, it might not quite get over the line, then what are the implications of that? Is that something that's going to flow through into the next plan? And what are the risks that might flow from not actually completing the things that we set out to do in quarter four or by the end of the year? And I appreciate we're not quite at the end of the year really yet in terms of reporting. So I guess it's just and if that would be helpful for me, I think, just to get a feel, almost a feel for the outcomes rather than just a list of tasks, if you like, just in terms of what is generated. So any comment on that would be really welcome. And the final thing for me, and this is more on me, I would probably welcome a refresher around the tracker and such like, just so I can get my head around some of what that's telling me to make sure I'm understanding properly. But I'll deal with that separately offline if that's okay. But so, thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Alison, you can just step in here. Thanks.
I will maybe make a start, and I'm sure Callum will perhaps fill in some more detail if I miss something. But in terms of the so what question, what has this done for us? What are the outcomes? That's really the function of the annual performance report. So every year we produce an annual performance report, which is designed to detail how we have delivered our strategic plan, and we try and use that as a very much outcome focused document, so that we can link what it is that we're actually doing back to the delivery of the strategic plan. So what you see at Risk Audit and Performance Committee is very much the process, the detail of the activity that we're doing. But the annual report is the one that hopefully you should see where the outcomes are being covered. And in terms of your second comment around about refreshing yourself about the tracker, don't worry about that too much, because as Callum mentioned earlier on, we are planning to, well, first of all, we have streamlined a lot of our activity, or we're certainly planning to streamline a lot of our activity in relation to the delivery plan going forward, just very much more focused on our 2 aims as opposed to 4. And in June, we will bring back, as Callum said, not only that sort of transitional report, as in what are we stopping, what are we continuing, etc., but also we'll give you a heads up on some of the tweaks that we're making to the way that we report. So it might be better hanging off doing your refresher until after that, get used to the new way of working.
Okay, thanks very much, Alison. Callum, and then Amy. Yeah,
just to build on what Alison was saying, Richie. So a few thoughts. So in terms of the new delivery plan, one thing that we are doing kind of very, very clearly in that is being much more specific in terms of what our key measures are, if you like. So you'll be able to see kind of from the off what we're the metrics, I guess, that we're using to essentially determine how we're quantifying success or not. As I also mentioned, the APR is really our main stock take, if you liked, in terms of answering that so what question. But having said that, one of the things that I guess we recognize is that that can potentially be a long time to wait to receive some of that information. So one of the things that we're looking to integrate into our reporting moving forward is more of that sort of quantification of key successes over that quarterly period. Now, depending upon the piece of work and depending upon what it's trying to achieve, that might be easier or more difficult depending on what it is. So it's much easier to quantify things like immunization rates than it would be if you're trying to develop a plan, for example. But where possible that is, we would be looking to provide that information kind of on a quarterly basis, just so you get a bit of a sense of some of that potentially a little bit more frequently than you do at the moment.
Okay, thanks very much. And then Amy.
Yeah,
thanks.
thanks. I think probably just to outline the performance will all come together and is reported as part of the statutory accounts. So we will gather that up, you know, to actually say what we've spent our money on in the year and what we've achieved and what we've done. And Anne's comments from the audit last year and the, if you like, the support that she's provided me with some information this year in setting out what that standard needs to look like has been really helpful. So we feel confident that we'll be able to, if you like, to answer that wider question that's been asked there. Going forward, I think the environment will be slightly different. What we're looking at through the strategic plan is being far more focused on what we need to do. There's, as you will have seen, there's a lot in that just now. We want to really focus on those efforts where we need to bring change, and how that comes together needs to be in, if you like, a performance dashboard that we are going to build up. And hopefully we might be fortunate to have a draft. I would hope, depending on, there's obviously a lot of work going on just now, but we would be aiming to have that in the summer. And where that will be really valuable is that you obviously are getting a formal update, but what you want to be able to see is at any point in time, how are we performing? What are we doing? What are the benchmarks that we are heading towards? And how does the strategy sit within that? So at the moment, we don't have that and it's not visible. So we don't see it as clearly, but going forward, we will. And that helps hugely, because we're very reliant on the financial information just now as an indicator of how we are doing. What we want to do going forward is we are a person-focused organisation, so we need to focus on the activities that we use to support people. The finance plan underpins that, and that's one of the key areas that we're focusing on, is making sure that that finance plan is absolutely linked to what we're doing. But you've got visible measures that you can see that tracking as well, so it's obvious almost where the focus needs to be, what we're directing our efforts towards, and it's presented differently in that manner. And I think that answers the question around, we've got this plan with a lot of information in it just now, but what is the objective and what is it achieving? That should hopefully fill that gap that we've got there just now. Thanks.
So thank you for that. Richie, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just briefly, Matt, thanks. And just to say, for Alison, Callum and Amy, thanks very much for that responses. That's absolutely spot on as far as I'm concerned in terms of the, I guess, the work in progress. So, you know, just to say thanks very much, and I get all that, and I will delay any more refreshing, as Alison suggested, for a bit later on. But no, just to say thanks very much for those responses. Thank you. Okay,
thank you. I mean, overall, the delivery plan is showing really good progress. Programs are so many greens. There's some really good achievements there. I mean, I've got various individual queries about some of the points. Maybe so, for example, on the adult autism assessment team, there's a couple of areas in the work plan which are not quite up to speed. There's that one. There's also got a query on the issue about the trauma-informed workforce, which is towards the end of the work plan. Is the best way for me to follow these up, is that through just emails, perhaps, just to get some indication? I mean, this is to try and be encouraging to see how we can move some of those ambers towards greens, recognizing that we're in a very difficult resource situation, but there are just a couple of queries that have come out of the work plan and the programme, individual kind of details there. Callum.
Yeah, so just to say, if you were comfortable emailing it, then we would be happy to link in with the project leads to get some of that additional information for you. And I think that point that you've raised, it also emphasizes the importance and hopefully some of the potential value add that we're looking to integrate into the delivery plan moving forward. So rather than you potentially having to seek information as to why particular projects are orange, for example, and the what we're putting in place to mitigate against them, being much more transparent or proactive with them, so you have all that information to hand. So these are things that we're proactively working on. They will hopefully help moving forward too.
Grant, that's really helpful. Thank you. I mean, I've got questions about some of the green status on healthy weight and the action on smoking and so forth, there are some really great health campaigns underway. So it's also to be encouraging about the good things that are happening. I mean, it's all good. It's all to try and just to be supportive and just to get some more information. So that's great. That would be really helpful. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this item, or are we done? So item 6.1, are we happy with the recommendations on page 32? Yep. Okay, thank you everyone. That takes us to the end of the meeting. I think we meet next on the 17th of June. So thank you everyone for your contributions, your attendance today. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope the rest of the day goes well.
Cheerio.
Thanks.
Thank
See you
you.
now.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.